Welcome, everybody, to Inside Drag Racing's exclusive coverage of the 6th Annual East Coast Drag Times reunion on the streets of downtown Henderson, North Carolina, and what is always one of the most exciting nostalgia drag racing programs anywhere in the country. And I should point out that you're looking at a bit of history. Actually, make that more than a bit. This is one giant chunk of history. As you see it, this is how it was found. The Georgia Shaker number 3 Ford Falcon of the one and only Hubert Platt. Not too long ago, this car was rediscovered, sitting for more than 2 decades, but nobody was probably more astonished to see the car in its current condition than the man who put it in that condition before it was stored away, Hubert Platt. This is unbelievable.
I'll tell you, it is. That's something else. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to believe that the car is still that real. You know what I mean?
You know, the amount of history that you created with this car, the amount of fans that you created with this car for you and your racing career is mind-boggling. But to look at this thing on nylon Firestone front tires with the original Krager SS's and the dry-rotted Goodyears in the back of it. I like the dry-rotted injector balls myself. This thing looked like it was parked one day after you last drove it in '66.
That car made me a fortune.
I bet it did.
Yep.
From coast to coast, I might add.
That's right. I took that car to California and to get the headers redone. I raced in Texas and I broke the headers. I went to Doug Thorley. And he built me some new headers. He said, we got to take it over to Lions Race Strip and test it.
And every magazine photographer in the country got a picture of you standing that car up that night at Lions.
That's right. And Doug Thorley was there, and Pappy Hart says, if you'll stay, he says, I'll give you $500 to stay next weekend. Doug said, I got to drive that car. Pappy said, you get out of that car, Doug, you'll get killed. Doug said, I'm driving it. So Doug drove the car, and then he built the Chevy Too Much. My wife named that car.
No kidding.
So
she came up with a Chevy Too Much name.
That's right. But anyway, I stayed and run some guy with an altar and beat him 3 straight. And Pappy said, look, if you'll stay next weekend, he said, I'll get you 3 races for $1,500. I said, unreal, that's a lot of money. So I run over to Carlsbad, and this guy was real smart in a dragster. He says, I'll tell you what, Mr. Platt. He said, you're pretty cocky. He said, you get back to the fence back there. And he said, when you get to starting line, I'll take off.
Well, the guy that made this car is standing right next to you, and I don't want to say made the car literally, but you're the guy that discovered the car. Tim Holland, where in the world did you find it?
Well, the car, I didn't really discover it. Some of my friends dealt with the owner of the car, and he was an older gentleman that decided to get out of the car restoration and collecting business, so he had quite a few cars, and this car was in the mix. And
you had to be stunned.
I was, and I had an opportunity to buy it, and fortunately we were able to put a deal together.
Now, did you call Hubert before you bought it?
No, I didn't, and I was really concerned that it might not be what it should be, but I called him very shortly after I purchased it, and he was a little standoffish at first, but he came around real quick when he realized I had the real deal.
Because every guy in the country with a Falcon calls him and says, I've got your old car.
Maybe so.
Now, I want to ask, when you first looked at this car, what was the one thing that you saw that you thought, or that you didn't remember, let's put it this way, that made you think to yourself, what was I thinking driving this car?
Well, see, I built that car in my basement, okay? Ford built the car, the Falcons, with the overhead cams in them. I didn't get one. I got pissed off.
You had the wedge, yeah.
That's right. So I built the wedge. I took a counterline axle and cut 6 inches out of the center and welded it back together. And you look at it still under there. And I put the roll bars in it. Did it out of exhaust pipe tubing, but you know what I mean? Made it as light as we could. And I put the traction bars and all that. Did it all in my basement. And then I went out running Fords.
Yeah, you outran the factory cars,
That's
absolutely.
exactly right.
Now, did this car ever get in the 8s, or was it just in the low 9s? I remember a 920 or so was about the quickest it ran.
Low 9s was about the best it run. But see, I was so good out of the gate, they had to catch me on the other end.
Right.
You know what I mean?
A lot of people have asked you here at Henderson, what are you going to do to the car? Are you going to completely restore it? Are you going to leave it alone? What are you going to do?
Well, the car belongs to him, but I made a suggestion to him. Take the car, clean the car up and paint it and leave it like it is. Don't go spend $1 million on it to try to show it something that it's not.
Because between the three of us, it was never that pretty when it was new.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Tim, are you going to take him up on that suggestion?
Absolutely. That's what we're going to do. We're probably going to, I don't know if we're even going to paint it, but we're going to put the trim back on it, clean it up, get it sound mechanically where it'll make a light pass and start there and see what happens.
Unbelievable. That's the most wonderful aspect of the East Coast Drag Times reunion program, is that stuff like this shows up. And thanks to Tim Holland and, of course, Hubert Platt for recreating this thing, or just bringing it out the way it is. And I want to point out one thing, that this car, at its time, was state-of-the-art technology, regardless of what Hubert says he built in his basement. This was everything an A-factory experimental car should be. And in fact, this car really wasn't built to conform to any set of rules. It was just a match race car, nothing more, nothing less. And believe me when I tell you, it's the last real example of these kinds of cars left.